Welcome to Wellness Waves Podcast.
Okay, let's unpack this. When you think about health, maybe managing your weight, there's probably no single word that pops up more or causes more. Well, confusion, maybe even obsession, than calories.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it feels like the whole conversation sometimes just boils down to counting them, cutting them, tracking every single one. For so many people, calories are like the only thing they look at when thinking about food in their body.
That's so true. They've become this dominant metric,
Yeah.
almost like a kind of nutritional money, but often without really getting the full story of what that money actually is, where it comes from, or crucially, what it really does once it's inside your system.
And that's precisely why we're diving into this topic today. We've got this source text called Decoding Calories for Health and Weight Management, and our aim here is to use what it says to move beyond that surface level, often kind of overwhelming, number-crunching view.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our mission really is to pull directly from this material to understand, okay, what are calories fundamentally? How does this source explain their pretty complex journey through our bodies?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe most importantly, take a critical look at whether they really are the single key, the magic bullet for health and weight that they often get made out to be.
Yeah, think of this deep dive as your shortcut. Using the insights right from the material you've given us, we want to give you a clearer, more nuanced, and hopefully, a less stressful take on something that affects all of us every single day. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. Let's open up this source and see what it tells us.
Okay, so digging into the text, the very first thing it tackles is that really basic question. What is a calorie? And honestly, it's almost deceptively simple, isn't it?
It really is.
The source lays out a definition that feels, almost too basic, considering all the weight and complexity we usually attach to the word.
It strips it right down to its core, yeah. The source defines a calorie as, quite simply, a unit of energy. That's it, a measurement.
A unit of energy.
Think of it purely in terms of, physics. It's just a way to quantify the amount of energy released when food gets metabolized or burned.
Okay, so like how inches measure distance or pounds measure weight. Calories measure energy. Simple enough. And the source uses a really helpful analogy right off the bat to make this stick.
It does, yeah. It compares calories to the gasoline that powers a car.
Oh.
Just like gasoline gives the car the energy it needs to run, calories are the fuel that powers our bodies. They enable everything, from breathing and thinking to, say, running a marathon. They represent the potential energy stored in food, just waiting to be converted and used.
That car analogy makes the basic idea really clear. Fuel for the machine. So, if calories are the fuel, where does this fuel actually come from? The source is explicit here. It comes from the food we eat.
Right. Every single bite we take contains this potential energy, measured in calories. And the source highlights the three main places this energy is packed in, the macronutrients we hear about all the time: protein, carbohydrates, and fats. These are the main carriers of that caloric energy in our diet.
Protein, carbs, fats. Got it. The big three. But the source doesn't just leave it at that simple definition. It immediately throws in a crucial bit of nuance, doesn't it? A layer of complexity that starts to push back against the idea of calories just being a simple number.
Yes, exactly. This is key.
It says that while calories come from these macros, they do not all affect the body in the same way.
And this is where the text signals right away that we need to look deeper than just the basic definition. A calorie that comes from protein might have a very different journey and impact inside your body compared to a calorie from fat, or especially compared to a calorie from different types of carbohydrates or fats. This is really the first hint that the source of the calorie, where it came from, is just as important, maybe even more important, than the number of calories itself.
And for you listening, this initial distinction from the source is really, really important to grasp. Every time you eat, you're not just adding a number to some daily total in your head or an app. You're giving your body energy, yes. But the form of that energy, that mix of protein, carbs, fats, immediately starts to dictate how your body uses that fuel, how you feel, and what your body actually does with it. It's not just dropping gas in the tank. It's more like asking, are you putting in premium fuel or something kind of sludgy? Or maybe even something that might gum up the works down the line, even if the total volume, the calorie number seems okay.
That's a great way to put it. And understanding that really sets the stage perfectly for the next big point the source dives into, which it identifies as a major stumbling block in how people generally approach nutrition, that overwhelming focus only on the number of calories.
This feels like the absolute center of the diet world for so many people, doesn't it? The calorie count on a label, the target number in a fitness tracker, it's all about hitting that number.
It really is.
But the source pushes back hard against this right away by bringing in a different concept, something more about quality.
Exactly. It pivots straight to the idea of nutrient density. Now, the source doesn't give like a strict dictionary definition, but it explains the concept really effectively through comparison. It highlights the massive difference between just consuming calories versus consuming calories that come packaged with a whole load of other beneficial stuff, nutrients. It's all about the quality of the calorie package, not just the size of the energy number printed on the side.
And the text uses such a clear, really relatable example to hammer this home. It contrasts a 500-calorie fast food meal with a 500-calorie balanced meal made from whole foods.
Right.
And it doesn't just imply they're different, it states flat out these are completely different experiences for your body.
They absolutely are. And according to the source, the difference isn't because one has more calories. Remember, they're both 500 calories in this specific example. The fundamental difference lies in everything else that comes along for the ride with those calories in the balanced whole foods meal.
What kind of things?
Well, the source specifically calls out fiber, protein, healthy fats, vitamins, minerals, maybe other beneficial plant compounds.
Mm-hmm.
All the things your body actually needs to function well, beyond just raw energy.
Right. So that 500-calorie fast food meal, it might be packed with calories, yeah, but they likely come from refined sugars, maybe unhealthy processed fats, sodium, and is probably lacking seriously in fiber and essential micronutrients. It gives you the energy units, sure, but not much else your body's actually crying out for.
Exactly. Whereas the 500-calorie whole foods meal, let's picture like grilled chicken or fish, a big pile of colorful veggies, maybe some quinoa or brown rice, a bit of avocado or olive oil. It provides that same energy amount, measured in calories. But it comes bundled with significant amounts of protein, which we'll get into more later, fiber that helps with digestion and fullness, healthy fats that are crucial for cells and hormones, and a whole spectrum of vitamins and minerals vital for, thousands of bodily processes.
So the energy number might be identical.
Identical. But the source implies that it's this combination of energy plus all those essential nutrients in the whole foods meal that allows it to truly nourish you, to fuel your body effectively, provide lasting satiety, that feeling of fullness, and support your long-term health in a way. The fast food meal, which is mostly just delivering energy units, simply cannot. The calorie count is the same, but the physiological outcome, completely different ballgame.
And this leads straight into another really fascinating point the source brings up, something I bet a lot of people listening have actually felt, this idea of the hunger paradox.
Ah, yes, that's a great term for it.
The text mentions how people who often eat a lot of processed foods, even if they're technically hitting their calorie target number for the day, might still feel hungry again really soon after eating.
It seems totally counterintuitive, doesn't it? You've just consumed, say, 600 calories. Theoretically, your energy needs should be met for a good while. So why would your body still be sending out those hunger signals?
Yeah, what's the source say is going on there?
The source explains it happens because, despite the high calorie count, the body isn't getting the nutrients it needs for true satisfaction and optimal function. It's getting the energy, maybe, but not the building blocks or the regulatory components.
Ah, okay, so the body isn't just doing simple math like calories in, check. It's also scanning for signals that it's received enough protein, enough fiber to slow digestion, enough vitamins and minerals to run its processes properly. If it just gets a flood of empty calories energy without those crucial cofactors, it still senses a deficit in terms of overall nourishment, even if the energy tank itself feels momentarily full.
Precisely. So it keeps signaling hunger, basically prompting you to go find the missing pieces, the actual nutrients it needs.
That makes so much sense.
The source suggests that the common lack of fiber, adequate protein, healthy fats, and micronutrients in many highly processed foods means they just don't trigger the same lasting satiety signals. They don't provide the cues that tell your brain and body, okay, we're truly nourished now, you can relax. So you might have taken in the energy, but the body's underlying drive for essential nutrients stays active, leading to that cycle of continued hunger or cravings not long after eating.
And honestly, who hasn't felt that? You eat something, maybe sugary or super refined, you feel stuffed for maybe 10, 20 minutes, but then an hour later, bam, you feel that familiar emptiness, almost like you didn't really eat anything substantial at all. The source points to that exact feeling as really powerful, real-world evidence that the quality of the food, its nutrient density, is dictating your body's response and your feelings of fullness far more powerfully than the raw calorie number alone. It's a lived experience that really backs up the source's point. Food choices are about way more than just energy units.
That personal connection, that lived experience, it's so key to grasping this. And it naturally leads us right into the third major section the source tackles, where it directly confronts one of the most common, almost foundational pieces of advice in the whole diet culture landscape. The idea of calories in, calories out.
Ah, yes, CICO. Good old CICO. The simple equation that's been drilled into us forever. Eat fewer calories than you burn, and presto, you'll lose weight. The source addresses this head on, right?
It does, absolutely. The source acknowledges that, okay, technically speaking, in a very basic physics sense, the principle of calories in, calories out holds true. Energy balance. If your body consistently uses more energy than it takes over a period of time, the net result will be a loss of mass, assuming that energy deficit is met by drawing from your body's stored reserves, which includes both fat and, importantly, muscle.
Okay, so it's not saying the fundamental physics are wrong. It's not defying thermodynamics.
No, not at all. But it immediately follows that acknowledgement by stating very clearly that it's a gross oversimplification.
Right, that's the key phrase.
And this is where the deep dive, guided by this text, really starts to challenge that widely held, almost gospel belief. The source argues that while the equation itself exists, trying to apply it as a simple, direct plug-and-play formula for managing human health and weight ignores the incredible dynamic complexity of our biological systems.
Yeah, your body isn't just a simple furnace or a bomb calorimeter, right? Where you just measure the fuel going in and the heat coming out, and that's the end of the story.
Exactly. The source makes a very, very strong point that how your individual body processes, stores, and ultimately uses those calories you take in is massively influenced by a whole host of internal and external factors. Even if the total calories in number stays exactly the same from one day to the next, the outcome can vary wildly based on these other things.
Okay, so what are some of these complicating factors the source brings up? What messes with that simple CICO equation?
Well, the source details several really crucial variables. First off, your individual metabolism. This isn't just one thing. It's the whole complex set of biochemical processes that determine how quickly and efficiently your body converts food into energy and how much energy it burns, just keeping you alive at rest, your basal metabolic rate. And this varies significantly from person to person.
Okay, metabolism. What else?
Your hormonal balance is listed as critical. Hormones like insulin, which we touched on, but also cortisol, a stress hormone, leptin, which signals fullness, ghrelin, which signals hunger. These all play massive roles in regulating appetite, satiety, fat storage versus fat burning, and overall energy expenditure. And guess what? These hormones are heavily influenced by the quality of your diet, how much sleep you're getting, your stress levels.
Wow, okay, so hormones are a big one.
Huge. Then there's your activity level. And not just the calories you consciously burn during a workout, but your overall daily movement, and crucially, your muscle mass, because muscle burns way more calories at rest than fat does. So more muscle means a higher resting metabolism.
Makes sense.
Your sleep, both quality and quantity, is mentioned too. Poor sleep messes with those appetite-regulating hormones, can increase cortisol, and generally impair metabolic function.
Right, I've heard that connection before.
And the source even includes stress levels. Chronic stress can elevate cortisol, which, as the source implies, can encourage the body to store fat, particularly around the abdomen, and can also impact food choices and appetite regulation.
Man, that is a long list of things that aren't just calories in or calories out. It makes the simple equation look, well, incredibly simplistic, doesn't it?
It really does. And the source drives this home with an example. Picture two different people. They eat the exact same number of calories every single day. Let's say 2,200 calories. According to the simple CICO model, they should have the same weight outcome, right?
Yeah, theoretically.
But the source says they could have dramatically different results. One person might lose weight, the other might maintain, and another might even gain weight on those same 2,200 calories.
How does the source explain that?
It attributes this variability, according to the text, to all those factors we just listed. Differences in their genetics, influencing metabolism and hormone sensitivity, differences in their muscle mass, differences in their gut microbiome perhaps, differences in their sleep patterns, stress levels, the timing of when they eat those calories, their overall lifestyle. All these things interact to determine how their unique body handles that same energy input.
So person A's internal environment and context leads to one outcome with 2,200 calories, and person B's leads to a totally different one.
Precisely. It fundamentally undermines the idea that just hitting a specific calorie target guarantees a specific result for everyone. Your unique biology and circumstances matter immensely.
Okay, that's a major blow to the simplicity of CICO. But the source goes even deeper, right? It doesn't just talk about individual differences. It talks about how the type of calorie itself, the macronutrient it comes from, has a fundamentally different metabolic fate.
Yes, this is another absolutely critical point the source makes, and it's a powerful argument against that old persistent notion that a calorie is just a calorie, regardless of where it comes from. The idea that they're all interchangeable once inside the body, the source says, nope, not true.
And it uses a really direct comparison to illustrate this, focusing on protein versus sugar.
Exactly, a stark contrast.
Okay, let's unpack what the source says about that specific difference.
Yeah.
How do calories from protein and calories from sugar affect us differently based on this text?
So the source states that protein, when you eat it, requires significantly more energy for your body just to digest, absorb, and process compared to carbohydrates, especially simple sugars or fats. This is often called the thermic effect of food, or TEF.
The energy cost of eating, basically.
Right. And the source highlights that protein has the highest thermic effect of the macros, meaning you effectively burn a larger percentage of the protein calories you consume just in the act of handling them metabolically. It's like there's a higher processing fee levied by your body on protein calories.
Interesting. So you're getting a bit less net energy from protein calories compared to sugar calories, just because they're harder work for the body to deal with.
In effect, yes. You expend more energy up front. But that's not all. The source also adds another crucial benefit of protein. It helps maintain muscle mass, especially important if you're active or trying to manage weight.
And why is muscle mass so important again?
Because muscle is metabolically active tissue. It burns a significant amount of calories even when you're just sitting around doing nothing. It's like the engine of your metabolism. So a diet that prioritizes getting enough protein, as the source suggests, helps you preserve or even potentially build this calorie-burning muscle tissue, which in turn helps support a higher resting metabolic rate over the long term.
Okay, so that's like a double advantage for protein, based on what the source is saying.
Yeah.
A higher energy cost to process it, and it helps maintain the body's calorie-burning machinery. Makes sense. Now, how does the source contrast this with sugar?
In stark contrast, yeah. The source points out that sugar, particularly refined sugars, triggers rapid insulin spikes and actively promotes fat storage.
How does that work?
When you consume sugars, especially ones without much fiber, like in sugary drinks or candy, they get absorbed into your bloodstream very quickly. This causes a sharp rise in your blood glucose levels. Your pancreas then responds by releasing a significant amount of the hormone insulin. Insulin's main job is to get that glucose out of the bloodstream and into cells for energy.
Okay.
But insulin is also a primary storage hormone. When you have frequent or large insulin spikes, it essentially sends a strong signal to your body, hey, lots of energy just arrived, store the excess. And it's very efficient at directing that circulating energy, especially excess glucose, towards being converted into and stored as body fat. Plus, the source implies that sugar is metabolized very easily with a very low thermic effect. It doesn't cost much energy to process, and its rapid absorption combined with that potent insulin response makes it particularly prone to contributing to fat accumulation, especially when consumed in excess or frequently.
Wow. Okay, so let's just recap that difference based on the source. We have protein calories. Harder for the body to process, higher TEF, helps maintain muscle, which burns calories, leading to better metabolic support. Then we have sugar calories. Easy to process, low TEF, causes big insulin spikes, and insulin actively tells the body to store fat.
That's the core distinction the source draws.
So even if, say, 100 calories from pure protein and 100 calories from pure sugar look the same on paper, the source makes it incredibly clear that their metabolic effects, the signals they send, the way the body handles them, are profoundly different. It's not just about the energy number, it's about the body's entire hormonal and metabolic reaction to the form of that energy.
It's a crucial distinction the source is making. It uses these specific examples to demolish the idea that the calories inside of the CICO equation is metabolically neutral. The composition of those calories fundamentally dictates how your body is going to react, which hormones get released, how much energy is burned just in processing, and where that energy ultimately gets directed. Is it used immediately? Is it used for building or repairing tissue like muscle, or is it getting shuttled off into storage as fat?
Okay, so putting all of this together, the individual variations, the hormonal influences, the sleep, the stress, the different metabolic effects of macros, What does this actually mean for you, our listener, if you're trying to navigate health goals, maybe trying to manage your weight, or perhaps wondering why past diets felt like such an uphill battle?
Well, according to the source, it means that simply trying to hit a specific, often quite low calorie number without paying close attention to what kind of calories you're eating and completely ignoring all those individual factors, the source listed your unique metabolism, your hormones, your activity, sleep, stress, genetics, muscle mass, your whole lifestyle context. That approach is likely going to be pretty ineffective, probably frustrating, and likely unsustainable in the long run.
Yeah, it really explains why just strict calorie counting in isolation often doesn't deliver the results people expect, or why progress stalls, or why weight regain can happen even if someone thinks they're sticking to the numbers. The human body, as the source shows, is just way too complex and dynamic for that simplistic single number approach to be the whole answer.
The source really builds a compelling case here for shifting our focus, moving away from seeing the calorie number as the sole determinant of success or failure. And that leads us perfectly into the fourth section of the material, which offers a more practical, more constructive perspective, how we can use our understanding of calories as a helpful tool, but emphatically not as the main focus, or worse, an obsession.
Right, this section feels like the, okay, so what should we do instead? Part of the source material. It moves from deconstructing the problems with a narrow view of calories to actually offering a better path forward, framing it as using calorie knowledge wisely, intelligently, rather than rigidly.
And the primary recommendation the source puts forward, the big takeaway here, is to shift the focus pretty dramatically away from just counting calories and towards prioritizing whole nutrient-dense foods.
So it comes back really strongly to that concept of nutrient density we talked about earlier.
Absolutely.
The source suggests that by deliberately making unprocessed whole foods the foundation of your diet, things like vegetables, fruits, lean proteins, fish, eggs, legumes like beans and lentils, whole grains, nuts, seeds, healthy fats, by doing that, you inherently start steering yourself towards better quality calories. You naturally get that energy packaged with all the fiber, vitamins, minerals, and other beneficial compounds we discussed.
And often, the source implies, you can achieve that without needing to meticulously track every single number, because these foods are naturally more satiating and provide the building blocks your body needs.
Okay, so focus on whole nutrient-dense foods first. Does it get more specific within that?
Yes, it does. The source recommends particularly prioritizing certain key macronutrients within that whole foods framework, specifically protein, fiber, and healthy fats.
And crucially, it explains why these three are so important, according to the text. It highlights that these macros, especially protein and fiber working together, are absolutely key for promoting satiety.
Right, that feelings of fullness and satisfaction after eating.
Which is huge for actually sticking to any healthy eating pattern long term, isn't it? If you feel constantly hungry, it's miserable.
Exactly. Protein and fiber, as the source suggests, take longer for your body to digest compared to, say, refined carbs or sugars. This helps slow down the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream, preventing those sharp spikes and crashes in blood sugar and energy levels. And it keeps hunger signals quiet for a longer period.
Makes sense. And the source also adds that prioritizing these nutrients supports your metabolism.
Yes, it connects back directly to our earlier discussion. Getting adequate protein helps maintain or build that metabolically active muscle mass, which helps keep your resting metabolic rate higher. Fiber isn't just about fullness. It also requires some energy to process, contributes to a healthy gut microbiome, which is increasingly linked to metabolic health, and helps regulate nutrient absorption. And healthy fats are essential building blocks for hormones, including those involved in metabolism and appetite regulation, as well as for healthy cell function throughout the body.
So, focusing on getting enough protein, fiber, and healthy fats isn't just about their calorie contribution. It's about actively choosing foods that, according to the source, support your body's complex metabolic machinery and signaling systems.
Precisely. But then, perhaps the most, liberating and maybe even revolutionary piece of advice in this whole section, drawing straight from the source, is the instruction to actually listen to your body, to pay attention to how different foods make you feel.
Wow, okay. That feels like a major departure from the purely number-driven external approach we've been talking about.
It really is.
The source is elevating your own subjective experience, things like your energy levels after eating, how your digestion feels, your overall sense of health and vitality. It's saying these internal cues matter more for guiding your choices than just strictly adhering to a calorie target. It's advocating for tuning into your own body's wisdom.
It's a powerful shift in perspective. The source essentially suggests that while calorie numbers are data points, useful perhaps for general awareness, your body's signals are the real-time feedback loop you should prioritize. Does a particular meal leave you feeling vibrant and energized for hours? Or does it leave you feeling sluggish, foggy, and maybe craving more food an hour later? Are you experiencing uncomfortable bloating, indigestion, or other digestive issues after eating certain types of foods? Do you feel consistently well, mentally sharp, and stable in your energy throughout the day when you eat in a certain way? The force implies that these qualitative assessments, these feelings, are ultimately more valuable for guiding you towards a way of eating that is truly sustainable and health-promoting for you, much more so than just hitting a specific number on a tracking app every day.
This is potentially huge for listeners who might feel trapped by that constant tracking, maybe feel guilty or like a failure if they go over some arbitrary numerical limit, even if they were eating nutritious food and felt great. The source is basically giving permission, maybe even urging you to shift that focus inward, to trust your internal experience.
Exactly. And building on that theme of listening to your body and avoiding extremes, the source includes a really critical warning that directly contradicts that simplistic lower calories are always better mindset that often dominates weight loss discussions. It specifically warns against the dangers of eating too little, against overly aggressive or prolonged calorie restriction.
Right, because the simple CICO logic might suggest the lower the in, the better, but the body isn't simple. What negative consequences does the source list for going too low?
It states clearly that eating too little for too long can actually slow down your metabolism.
The dreaded metabolic adaptation.
Precisely. It's the body's intelligent survival mechanism kicking in. If it perceives a chronic energy shortage, a famine situation basically, it adapts by becoming more fuel efficient. It lowers its resting metabolic rate, meaning it burns fewer calories just keeping the lights on, in an effort to conserve its precious energy reserves.
Which is exactly the opposite outcome someone focused purely on maximizing the calories outside wants. They're cutting calories to increase the deficit, but the body cleverly responds by lowering the out part of the equation to close the gap. That's counterproductive. What else? The source also says extreme restriction can cause fatigue.
Logically, yes. If you're chronically underfueling your body relative to its actual energy needs for activity, repair, brain function, everything, it simply won't have the energy reserves required. You'll feel physically tired, mentally drained, run down. It impacts your ability to function optimally in daily life.
Makes total sense. And the source also mentions a really crucial one, that severe calorie restriction can even lead to muscle loss.
Yes, and this is a critical point that often gets overlooked when people are solely focused on the number on the scale dropping. Weight loss isn't always just fat loss. If the body isn't getting enough energy from food, especially if protein intake is also too low during that restriction, it will look for other sources within itself. And while it will burn fat under conditions of significant and prolonged energy deficit, it can also start breaking down valuable muscle tissue to convert into energy.
And losing muscle is bad news for metabolism, right?
Terrible news. As we said, muscle is metabolically expensive. Losing muscle means your resting metabolic rate drops even further, making it even harder to manage weight in the long term once you stop restricting, and it also negatively impacts your strength, your functional ability, and your overall metabolic health.
So putting it all together, according to this source, the seemingly logical approach of just drastically cutting calories can actually backfire spectacularly. It can lead to a slower metabolism, persistent fatigue, and the loss of precious muscle mass, all of which undermine the very goals of sustainable health and weight management. This really highlights why the source strongly advises against just trying to eat the absolute fewest calories possible.
Absolutely. It's a perfect illustration of why the simple CICO model falls short in practice. And the source wraps up this whole practical guidance section by emphasizing that truly sustainable, healthy nutrition isn't about pursuing these extremes of restriction. It's about finding balance. It's about nourishing your body adequately with high-quality, nutrient-dense foods, paying attention to signals of hunger, fullness, and well-being, and avoiding those metabolic pitfalls that come with severe deprivation. It offers a path forward that feels much more like self-care and supporting your body, rather than fighting against it with rigid control.
And again, for you listening, you can probably connect this to your own experiences. Have you ever felt that bone-deep fatigue, the irritability, maybe even the constant coldness that can come with trying to stick to a very low-calorie diet? That, according to the source, is your body sending you really important feedback. Have you noticed how a satisfying meal, rich in protein, healthy fats, and lots of vegetables, keeps you feeling full, stable, and energized for hours, whereas maybe a similarly caloried snack that's mostly refined carbs and sugar leaves you crashing and burning not long after?
Hmm.
The source is essentially saying, trust those feelings. Trust that internal feedback. It's a powerful guide, maybe even more reliable in the long run than any number spit out by a tracking app.
It really reframes the entire relationship with food, doesn't it? Moving away from one dominated by external rules and numbers towards one guided by internal wisdom, satiety cues, and a focus on quality nourishment. And all of this is grounded in the insights presented in this source material we're exploring.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all of this now. We've covered a lot of ground, from the basics to the complexities. What's the ultimate core message that this source wants us to walk away with after this deep dive?
I think the central message, pulling together all the threads we've discussed from the source, is
Yeah.
really clear and consistent. Yes, calories are the units of energy. Yes, they are the fuel for our bodies. They are undeniably a piece of the puzzle. However, and this is the critical distinction the source hammers home again and again, they are absolutely not the sole determinant of your health. They are not the complete picture when it comes to well-being or effective, sustainable weight management.
Right. The source consistently, and I think quite compellingly, argues that the quality of those calories, where they come from, what nutrients they bring along with them, how they impact your hormones and metabolism matters just as much, and perhaps, arguably even more, than the sheer quantity, the number itself. It's about the metabolic signal the food sends to your body, not just the raw energy value it contains on paper.
And therefore, the practical path forward that the source advocates for isn't one rooted in rigid calculation, deprivation, and restriction. Instead, it's a path grounded in actively choosing to focus on eating whole, nutrient-rich foods most of the time. The source suggests that this approach naturally helps your body regulate its own energy intake and utilization far more effectively, promoting lasting satiety, supporting metabolic health, and reducing the need for that constant, often stressful number crunching.
Yeah, this deep dive, really digging into the source material you provided, genuinely does help cut through so much of the noise and confusion that surrounds calories in popular diet culture. That singular obsession with the number. The source offers a much more comprehensive, more holistic, and frankly, a significantly more empowering perspective.
I agree. It shows that tuning into your body's own signals, hunger, fullness, energy levels, digestion, and prioritizing nutrient density are powerful, sustainable strategies that unfortunately often get completely overshadowed by the relentless, often counterproductive focus on just counting calories.
It feels like it equips you, the listener, with the knowledge to look beyond that simple calorie count you see on a food label or in your tracking app, and instead encourages you to consider the much bigger picture. What is this food actually contributing to my body's complex functions? How does it make me feel, not just immediately, but hours later? Is it supporting my health goals in a sustainable way?
Exactly. It's about informed choices based on a broader understanding.
So just to briefly recap as we wrap up this deep dive, we've journeyed right from the source's basic definition of a calorie as simply a unit of energy. We saw the fundamental importance of nutrient density, vividly illustrated by that 500-calorie fast food versus whole food meal comparison. We thoroughly explored how the source dismantles the simplistic calories in, calories out model by highlighting all those crucial factors: metabolism, hormones, sleep, stress, genetics, muscle mass, and importantly, the type of macronutrient that dramatically influence how your unique body actually processes and uses energy. And finally, we landed on the source's recommended, more holistic approach. Prioritize whole, nutrient-dense foods, really learn to listen intently to your body's feedback signals, and crucially, avoid the metabolic traps and negative consequences of extreme calorie restriction, aiming instead for sustainable balance and nourishment.
Understanding these critical nuances, these layers of complexity that the source lays out so clearly, can genuinely empower you. It can help you make more informed, more intuitive, and ultimately, likely more effective nutrition choices that truly support your long-term health goals and your overall sense of well-being. It really is about reclaiming a feeling of confidence and agency around food, rather than feeling perpetually controlled by, and maybe even anxious about, the numbers.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a really interesting thought to ponder, one that flows directly from the implications of the source material we've explored together today. If the source makes such a compelling case that how food actually feels in our bodies, measuring things like our energy, our digestion, our overall vitality, provides feedback that is ultimately more valuable and more guiding than rigid calorie tracking, what fundamental shift might occur in our relationship with food and maybe even with our bodies when we truly start prioritizing and trusting those internal signals instead of solely relying on external numerical targets set by an app or a diet plan?
That's a great question. Or another way to think about it, stemming from the source. Given how distinctly the source illustrates that calories from different sources, protein versus sugar, for example, trigger vastly different metabolic and hormonal responses, influencing everything from energy expenditure to fat storage. What profound benefits might we be missing out on? Or perhaps what hidden drawbacks might we be inadvertently creating for ourselves by mentally and practically treating all calories as if they are functionally identical, regardless of whether they came wrapped in fiber and micronutrients or delivered as pure, refined energy? What happens when we stop seeing all calories as equal?
Really provocative questions to carry with you and perhaps explore in your own personal journey with food and health. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into decoding calories, all guided by the source material you provided.
We truly hope this exploration offers you some valuable new perspective and perhaps empowers your choices as you move forward.